Welcome back into Talking Points. Through TikTok posts, memes, and podcasts, former President Donald Trump's campaign introduced Make America Great Again to younger voters, and they showed up for him.
According to exit polls, young men between the ages of 18 and 29 swung enormously for Trump, shifting right by 8 percentage points since 2020. Joining us now to discuss is Mike Lamorte, co-anchor on Market Shares, love that show, and an election special analyst. Good to see you again. Welcome back to the show.
And Ilana Epstein is also here, a co-host of Juice and Java and Unpeeled. She was also a senior media analyst for our election special. Thank you both so much for being here. Ilana, start with you since you're our resident TikTok expert. How is TikTok reacting?
Oh my gosh, well, I think anyone couldn't go anywhere on social media without seeing people's reactions. I mean, people were posting night of, the next day. Some people even took a few days to post their reactions, but there definitely were a lot of mixed reactions. Let's take a look.
This can't be real. Yo, I'm scared to go to sleep. I might wake up a mother slave.
J. Trump will be the 47th president of the United States.
So we see that reaction there on social media.
All across the spectrum.
All across the spectrum. But we mentioned earlier how young people, at least young men, swung really, really hard for Trump. And we talked so much about this show, about the MAGAverse and the MAGA bros.
The Manosphere.
Right, the Manosphere. What did you see in the Trump campaign that swung young men so hard for him in this election?
Well, first off, I just really want to pinpoint the data there, Jake. You guys talked about some data there before, but to bring in some data from the national election poll, in 2020, we saw 56% of young men supporting Biden. That was a 15-point margin that literally swung in favor of Donald Trump in 2020. So why exactly did that happen? I think there was a lot of boots on the ground work, especially at college campuses where there's always a lot of young voters. I even went over to Penn State a couple of weeks ago where I saw Vivek Ramaswamy. He was out there with Charlie Kirk. They spoke a lot to those college students. They even were trying to pull some young voters to vote in places like State College, and he was even successful, Charlie Kirk, in doing so, if you want to take a look.
I want to try to win you over as a liberal for Donald Trump. So you're going to give me a chance, okay?
I will, sir.
All right, okay. What's happening at the Democrat Party is this very sinister combination. It's a party of censorship, it's a party of war, a party of open borders that is against actual traditional liberal values.
I agree.
So which way are you leaning?
Can I get a hat?
That's a good answer.
And Mike, it's really interesting to see those conservatives going into potentially, combative spaces like college campuses, traditionally seen as liberal, to try and win over folks, particularly those young men voters. And for you, Ilana, talking about Harris's media strategy, she decided not to do the Joe Rogan Experience podcast that Donald Trump did in the closing days of the campaign. How did that hurt her reach when talking to those particularly young men voters?
Yeah, Luke, I think a lot of people assumed Gen Z was Democrat, so this did come as a surprise. And a lot of young voters, both male and female, care about the economy. And Harris's campaign really did focus on abortion. And I do want to talk about these podcasts. Trump was on Theo Von, Joe Rogan, Logan Paul, Aiden Ross, the Aiden Ross stream, which I think a lot of people thought was a joke, but in reality, this is what a lot of those apolitical voters are watching. And Trump did win over a lot of votes in that way. The Call Her Daddy podcast that Kamala Harris was on got 849,000 views. That's just talking about YouTube. The Joe Rogan video on YouTube currently has 48 million. So 48 million versus 849,000, that's really showing a huge gap there. And also with these celebrity endorsements, I think a lot of people thought this was going to help, but a lot of people want to hear from local working class people, not these celebrities who are living completely different lifestyles. So I think a lot of people are saying that the Harris campaign really did miss out by not going on these other podcasts that Trump did.
Yeah, Ilana, so interesting about the appearances that Trump did on non-traditional media. And when you're watching his acceptance speech, Aiden Ross was mentioned in a presidential acceptance.
He called up Dana White.
I know, and Aiden, he mentioned Aiden Ross, something I thought I would never see in a presidential acceptance speech, but it looked like it worked with young men. But I also want to talk about young women and their swing in this election.
Yeah, so going back to that national election poll data, 65% of women, young women rather, supported Joe Biden back in 2020. Now that was a 33% margin in favor of the Democrats. But then you go 4 years in the future over to 2020, 58% of young women supported Kamala. That's 14 points shifted over
drop
to the
even post-Dobbs.
Exactly. Now,
which is the opposite of what we've been
What
hearing.
a female candidate.
Right.
So what is that showing? Well, that's showing that the Kamala Harris campaign focused so much on things like abortion, things like women's health rights and access to it thereof. But that wasn't enough, that there were so much other policies that even women, young women, were taking into account, such as immigration, such as the economy. And apparently, to young voters, even those policies might matter more, especially in the long term. We saw Kamala Harris go on The View a couple of months ago, and when she was asked, would she have done anything differently than Joe Biden did in those administrations, her response was, well, I've been in the room making these decisions with him, counseling him. I wouldn't change much. That, therefore, translates to the young voters. That lets them know, well, there are issues that are going on in the country right now with the economy, with immigration, and those matter as well. And if you're not going to change anything about that, well, the data shows that they're very opinionated on it.
And I think so often young voters are looking for change candidates. I feel like that's just kind of a very young person thing to be looking for someone who's bringing change. And both candidates offered their own definition of what change would be. And clearly they went with Donald Trump's definition, at least the majority of the country did, even though the majority of young voters actually did support Harris. But I want to bring you in, Ilana, because we're looking at this gender gap of women supporting Harris by 24 points, men supporting by 2 points. Bit of a gulf there between the two. I've been talking to a lot of friends of mine who are either in relationships or have friends that voted for Donald Trump. What is the sentiment here?
There's a lot going around on social media of people saying that politics is going to affect the relationships. A lot of Trump supporters are posting about not letting politics get in the way, and a lot of Harris voters are posting about saying how could it not get in the way. I want to point out a graphic from Matt Bernstein. He is a queer makeup artist, and he's amassed about 2 million followers by posting about his social and political views. He said, quote, "Why is it always the people who have just voted away someone else's human rights who are saying this?" And a lot of people are saying that what friends and families are posting, that it matters, and that groups of people should have, that if we differ in what people believe if we differ in political views, that could actually alter your view of someone. And I think this is very interesting because politics, people on social media are sharing their views of politics, and that's never really been the case before.
And it's hard to see how if you block those people out, how you're going to convince them to vote for your side the next time around.
Yeah, and that's something we'll talk about later in the show, but so interesting. Ilana Epstein, Mike Lamorte, thank you so much.